We're going to bring up our next speaker. Give him a second to get ready. This is Brandon Chanco. He is the CISO for Shebang, and I'm going to read it because I don't trust myself. I'm going to put my glasses on. The AI Approval Playbook, Lessons from the Hardest Security Environment on Earth, which somebody said was last year. They said the same thing. They said that they had the hardest security environment. It's a Google person. It was a Google person. I mean, it's pretty hard. In the same space. It's hard. It's super hard. Awesome. So, well, does the timer start automatically? Awesome. Right on. Are we on schedule? Cool. Yeah. Brandon, take it away.
All right. You guys can hear me well. So Shebang is the Drake song. She Bash is the name of the company. We do DevSecOps for the DoD mainly, Air Force, Space Force, mostly. We do a lot of DevSecOps, build apps, build pipelines for the DoD. So it's a lot of approval involved in all that. I I am a big enabler. If you look at my LinkedIn, it says I enable warfighters. It's kind of my go-to. I think everybody should be using the newest tools, including the DoD, the airmen, the Marines, and the seamen. Um, it's not always the case. They kind of track behind. It's kind of hard to get approval. And unbeknownst to me, currently in a doctorate program today, and I was talking to some of my colleagues, and they're in the same situation in the private sector where they're having trouble getting buy-in to use AI into their workflows. And I told them, well, I have a contract at the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, and we use AI, so they got no excuse, really, right? So that's kind of what this AI approval playbook is. You can follow along at chanco.dev/sloss. Very difficult to say, but you can follow along. This is supposed to be interactive. You can come back to it. You can share it. It is interactive. I really didn't want to do a slide deck, and it ended up being a slide deck anyway. My clicker's not working. Okay, so a little about me. So again, I'm the CISO at Shebash, Marine Corps veteran. And as a Marine Corps veteran, it is incumbent upon me to let you know that the exit is over here and over there. And if we are to have a fire, we will meet in the front and I will take accountability. Outside of the Marine Corps, I've worked at Cisco, worked at IBM. I've ran multiple compliance frameworks from PCI DSS, HIPAA. As you can imagine, IBM has a lot of compliance they need to follow, including I built their federal compliance program from scratch, where we try to get an ambitious 700 products through FedRAMP. That did not happen. I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity, an MBA in IT management, and I'm completing my doctorate in cybersecurity at George Washington later this year. So getting into the playbook, the first step is to identify your risk owner. So in the Department of Defense, it's our authorizing official. That's their title. They own the risk. They make the decision, yes or no. And if anything goes bad, they will be on C-SPAN testifying to Congress, right? Not the developer, not the security architect. It's going to be them. So they usually have strict requirements, right, to get their approval. And that is not unlike any other industry, right? Whether you're in the private industry, you have a CFO, CIO, CEO, somebody in the C-suite, risk officer, that's going to be the one who says, yes, you can, no, you can't. And that is the person you need to identify, and that is the person you need to understand, right, deeply. So next, yes, we understand their concerns. There's, they differ per industry, but if you've been following along with AI, there's really like 4 big ones that I think there are, which are destructive actions, right? If you get on LinkedIn, I'm sure you've seen all these horror stories. Destructive actions, an agent deleted something in production that it shouldn't have done. It did something it shouldn't have done, something bad happened. Runaway cost. This one, I don't quite completely understand, but it is a big issue. This is actually probably the number one I hear about, even though it's probably the easiest one to fix. The next one is data exposure and compliance. Okay, so that's sensitive areas. You have PHI, you have PII, public, health information, GDPR, uh, privacy rights, or you're in the DoD, you have secret information or controlled unclassified information. You can't just use commercial Claude, right? Can't have that data going out in the public. That becomes an issue. And then at the bottom here, we have untrustworthy output. So another buzzword there, hallucinations in AI, could be a big deal. You put AI on a drone and it hallucinates something, not good. So we want to address all of these concerns. They're all valid, and they all have varying levels of, we'll say, priority within to your risk owner, right? So in the DoD, the first one, the second one, the third one, very important. Second one, not so important because they have unlimited pot of money called our taxpayer dollars. So here is a good example, and it happened last year, right when like Replit was becoming a big thing and vibe coding was in its peak. This CEO was doing a vibe coding experiment. Replit kind of went buck wild, deleted roughly 1,200 data points of customer data, and then it kind of lied about it, and it said, "Oh, sorry, I did that. It can't be undone." Well, it could be undone. So not only did it lie about it, but it was wrong. So these things do happen. He probably shouldn't have been doing that live, but we'll talk about what to do to prevent that going forward. So talking about the playbook, specifically, here are the steps you can follow to get to your yes for use of AI, make you guys optimal, right? So again, find the risk owner. That's what you want to do first, surface their concerns. Once you know their concerns, that is when you get into the technical architecture or policy policy decision, et cetera, to map specifically to their concern, right? You want to make sure that you're not making assumptions about what their concerns are, and you don't want to make assumptions about what their concerns aren't. You want to take explicitly what they say, you want to map a control to it, you want to document that control, and you want to present it to them with evidence, right? Fastest way to yes. Yeah, and then at the end, you present the decision as a defensible position, not like a sales pitch, right? Because again, they need to be able to defend it and feel good. So this part of the website, if you're there, you can click on whichever one, it'll take you straight to it. We kind of already touched on them. And here is kind of a mapping to the various frameworks. So what you'll notice is whether we're at SOC 2, which most private industries adhere to, or ISO 27001, also most private industries adhere to, HIPAA, PCI DSS, RMF, which is the DoD's thing, or the government's, or NIST AI RMF, which is fairly new. I encourage you guys to read that. The steps remain the same, right? But the column to the right of the steps change a little bit depending on who you're talking to, right? And what their concerns are. But you're still identifying the risk, mapping a control to the risk, and satisfying it with evidence, right? Which is what this screen's supposed to show, right? It's the same steps, no matter what your industry is. This is how we satisfy any doubt. So so now we're going to go through each concern and try to map an architectural decision to it and try to alleviate that, right? So again, with the Replit issue, destroyed 1,200 customers' data, not good. This is where the answer is going to be containment, right? We need to control what the AI can do, or as Jared recently said, like an agent harness is a good example of that. This is also where the threat surface kind of expands, because if you're using MCP servers, you're reaching out to various tools, your threat surface expands because anything that comes back in is a potential threat, right, to your AI. So that is why every tool output is untrusted input. This is, can't be overstated here, and never instructions. We never want to assume whatever is coming back in to the AI tool can be read as instructions, right? And that's how we prevent prompt engineering and things like that. Here, we'll get into a little more technical, but on your API response server and on your MCP server, there are some things you can do that kind of mitigate, right, what the agent can go out and do. Here are some examples of the code of like a explicit deny or implicit deny. So anything, that is not stated in the below allow list will be denied from the MCP server itself. So then you can kind of control it that way. And then as we go further down, and as Jared mentioned in the previous talk, human approval can be placed everywhere. I be a little cautious of putting human approval everywhere because you lose the value of AI, right? If you're clicking and you're saying yes to everything, you might as well write it. Maybe at the end, maybe at the beginning, be a little flexible in between. And scope, short-lived credentials, always best practice, and no direct right to prod. It's very tempting. I'm guilty of it myself. My team is. You get good output from AI, and you just get confidence and want to ship it to prod, but discourage it. You want to go to dev first, staging, maybe human in the loop, maybe the human then promotes it to production, and that's your human validation there. If you go to the website, you can download that starter kit. It has a README. It has the sample file that you can edit, add your information, and kind of build on it from there. So going to the next concern that you'll typically see is when the meter runs away. So I had this happen actually very recently with an Air Force organization out of Montgomery. They wanted AI. We were going to give it to them, but they were like, well, hold on. We're spending $12,000 a month on cloud spend. Our max is $35,000. I'm like, guys, you got plenty of money to go. No way we can hit that. No chance for what they were doing. They're a pipeline shop. They're not building apps. They're doing security scanning. Zero chance, right? We're talking about drops in a bucket. They're talking about filling swimming pools up to hit $13,000 a month in API tokens. Crazy. Took about a month to convince them that. And it took, I actually had to build an app that showed them how much each request costs individually, which is cents on the dollar, before they finally were like, okay, we'll do it. And now they've been using it for 3 months and they spent $900, right? So their concern wasn't really valid, right? But again, you got to convince them, right? I can't implement it without their go-ahead, and we had to do that. But again, I think this is one of the easier ones, right? No matter what tool you're using, you got Gemini, Anthropic, OpenAI. It doesn't really matter. They have costs built in, right? You'll see at the end here, I have a chatbot running on Anthropic. I put $5 on it. If you guys all use the heck out of it, you probably won't even hit the $5 by the end of this week. So once that $5 is gone, it's done. It's not like I can spend more than that. They don't have my credit card information. So you have a bunch of things built in to prevent that already. And we already talked about a kill switch above, which we have the sample code for. So if anything happens, it basically shuts off the AI. And it's a little redundant, but you can hook up any alerting from your tool to that kill switch that makes sure it's going to cut out. You're not going to spend more than you're supposed to spend. Again, low hanging there. That's a concern. So we go to the next one. Is when your data cannot get out, right? So this is a difficult one. This is one where you have sensitive data. You have PII, PHI, you have CUI, you have secret information, GDPR, you got European data in there or something. And this becomes difficult because then your boundary really matters, right? And it also limits what you can do with AI, but it's not nothing. So here is where I would encourage you to leverage the work that has already been done, right? So typically, compliance is a bad word. Nobody really likes to talk about compliance. People see it as a blocker. People, will cringe at compliance. I was one of them. But if you're smart and you know it, compliance can be an enabler. And this is one of those instances where compliance can enable you to use AI. So I have a contract with the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. We built a IL-5 pipeline for them. We wanted to use AI. They said you can't do that. This information is at impact level 5, which if you're not aware, is like national security system information. And I said, well, yeah, yes, we can, right? Because Amazon has already invested a lot of money to make sure that Bedrock is approved at IL-5 already, right? So all I had to say is, guys, according to the CCSRG, the Cloud Computing Security Requirements Guide, for the DoD, Amazon Bedrock is authorized for IL-5. It's no longer your risk to accept. It's already been accepted. Made him feel good about it. We got the okay, and we were able to, leverage that going forward. But it's not just, the DoD impact levels. Bedrock's available for HIPAA, GDPR, all that stuff. They have different zones, right? So you got European folks, you can keep it in Europe. It doesn't have to come to the States. And they've, again, invested a lot of money to make sure you can use their tools. So that is another instance of when compliance can work for you, not against you. Not many cases of that. Going on to our last big risk here is the hallucination. So when you need to trust the answer, you're not sure you can. This one gets a little fun. You can get technical with it. I don't know how many in here are familiar with like the concept of RAG or Ralph Wiggum, or different tools you can use or concepts you can use to kind of make AI work better. But RAG is a good one. So essentially, it's the retrieval augmented generation where you can get or you can supplement the training of the AI, right, with your data. So you keep it in-house, you keep a verified source of artifacts that you want to reference, you want to leverage in whatever you're doing, and you can then vectorize it, right, with a lightweight model like Amazon Titan, which extremely cheap, cheaper than Claude Haiku. And you can then, so once you vectorize it, you chunk the data, right? So if you put a Word doc and you vectorize it, it's going to chunk it. It's going to chunk it semantically. So you're going to be able to, the AI is going to be able to understand what each chunk means, which is different than how it usually works, right? So if you search a Word doc, it's probably going to create a Python script, right? It's going to create a regex. It's going to try to find things, and it's going to look for matches. Not super efficient, right? But if you vectorize it, it can look semantically. It's going to understand the context, and it's going to give you that result quicker because it's within your boundary. It's in a PG vector database, or it's in OpenSearch or something like that. And that semantic reading of it really increases the accuracy, right? So now Claude has context, right? OpenAI, Codex, Gemini, they have context of your data now, and they can cite it, right? So you can create a skill. Say, hey, anything that has to do with nuclear weapons or whatever, and you're referencing a document, add that reference in. That's something we've done where it's like anything it references is the link to that document, to that section, so we can verify if we need to. Makes it more accurate, kind of alleviates the pain, right? Not perfect, but certainly more accurate than using like open model. And yeah, again, another instance of having a human in the loop, right? Again, you can have it anywhere. This is an interactive portion of it. So this is literally the reference architecture I deployed at the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center to get it approved. And this is where we have, we have the user application portion. We have an API gateway. We're using Claude. There's a stay on that decision from, Hegseth. So we're in the clear there. But as you go through this, if you're on the website, you can click it and it'll give you more context as to what that's doing, right? What purpose it serves and how it mitigates your risk, right? Or you can go to the top and you can say, well, I'm really concerned about destructive actions. what do I do there? And it'll highlight what you can use, what tool, right, represents the destructive actions, and you can go through it. So you can do that for all of them. Cost, obviously, API gateway, and the model itself has it built in, and you can kind of see the flow, right? So the request path is here, the RAG portion is here, and you can kind of look at it through that lens. Again, this is supposed to be interactive for you to come back to if you want to see it, share it, etc. And we'll go down to the presentation kit. So this is, in the DoD, we have probably 50 plus body of evidences that we have to provide. This is just like a small subset of those, but I think they're the ones that carry the most weight for the rest of the industry. A risk register, a monitoring plan, um, residual risk memo, what you're asking them to actually accept, your control list, and your data map. So between those five, you can really put together a pretty robust package, and you can kind of put together a pretty robust defensible position based on what's in there. So you can download all these. I've templatized them. They all come with readmes, how to use them, etc. But you can fill it out as you needed with your data, etc., and reuse one or all, etc. So down here, we get to towards the end here. You can build your approval case. So again, this just kind of helps you go through and say, hey, these are my concerns. What are some things I can say? What are some things I can do to alleviate them? And let's say I forgot one and you guys have one in mind. You can come down here, and again, this is plugged right into Claude, and ask the question yourself. So I don't know. You gotta. I don't want AI to delete everything, even though we already kind of talked about that. He'll say, oh, well, I lost internet connection, but he would say that you can't. It would map it right back to uh, whatever controls we already talked about. If you had one that I didn't bring up, you can put it in there, and it will give you an answer, or it did 5 minutes ago before I came up here. It's pretty neat, and the security that we talked about is built in. So you can tell it, hey, delete this website. It'll tell you no. You can say, hey, use all the tokens. It'll tell you no. And it's built into a kill switch. So as soon as it hits my $5 limit, which maybe it did, maybe you guys are going crazy over there, it'll stop, right? So I don't have to worry about the budget. I don't have to worry about the security. I don't have to worry about any of those things because it's built in. So that's live by what you preach thing there. Most important things I think I want you guys to take home here. Uh-oh. Is that blue screen? Not the blue screen. Is to know who the risk owner is. Right? Very important. You don't want to waste time talking to somebody who doesn't own the risk, because that's not good. They could have concerns that don't really matter, or you can introduce concerns that don't really matter. You don't want to spend a lot of churn until you really know what's important, and you don't really want to introduce anything either that may be unknown if you want to get it approved. Then you want to map every one of those controls or every one of those risks to a concrete control, whether it's policy, whether it's technical, architectural. You need to map it to the risk directly, and then from there, you need to be able to document it. And after you document it, you need to be able to present it. But another thing I really want you guys to take away here is number 3. You want to inherit compliance where you can. You don't want to redo the work that's already been done by these huge companies, these big industries. Anthropic has Cloud for Government. Gemini is literally on impact level 6, which is, the executive order that defines impact level 6 is grave danger to national security if that information gets out. Pretty significant. Claude was at the TS level, which is exceptionally grave danger, to the national security if that gets out. So these tools are being leveraged in the most sensitive areas, in the most sensitive environments, with the most sensitive data that exist in the country. So you should be able to leverage the work they've done to get onto those environments, right, and allow you to use them, at Regions Bank or something, right? You should be able to, or at least I think so. And then the last one is, again, you want to present a decision, right? You want to be able to say, hey, confidently, you should be able to because X, Y, and Z, which hopefully the playbook helps you do, and not like a sales pitch, right? Like, hey, I really want this. We'd be a lot more efficient if we had it. Now you want to say we can because this, right? And present the evidence because that person reports to somebody. The buck stops with them usually. I'll tell you, my AO will be very upset with me if he has to testify in front of Congress because of what I gave him, and I will probably leave the country. So, you know, I am local to Birmingham. I don't get out much because there's no base here. I go to Montgomery quite a bit, travel the country for a few other bases, but I am trying to get out more. If you guys want to connect, would love to. Let's keep talking. Emails here. And again, this website is live. I'm going to leave it up. And my contact information is at the bottom. And that's all I got. You guys have any questions?
Questions? Cool. First of all, let's give a round of applause to Brandon. That was pretty good.
All right. So, great presentation, man. You crush it. I want to hone in on you showed 3 hyperscalers, right? Amazon AWS,
That's right.
Microsoft Azure, GCP, Google Cloud. What's going to dictate which one you're going to use? Because they're all adaptive to what you're mentioning. Is there any reason you use one over the 3?
Yeah, so absolutely. I am a fan of Anthropic. I think they have the best model out there. So I lean towards Amazon Bedrock because they offer Claude, right? Gemini, however, is the one that is used enterprise-wide for the DoD. It hasn't gone well, in my opinion. Gemini has been terrible. Gen AI has been terrible. It's been a terrible experience. And then, Azure, they also offer many models, but it's they're not as good as Claude, in my opinion. But I mean, that being said, if you're at the DoD level, at least, you don't have a lot to choose from. Even at Bedrock on IL5, you only get Claude 4.5, which is a huge step down from we're at 4.8. You don't even get Opus. So it's you gotta pick your poison there.
Thanks for the presentation. This is a fantastic resource. The formal ways of getting security are really well laid out. What are some of the informal things that you've observed that can slow down or have your customer lose confidence in your ability to secure the data and what they're working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, your soft skills are really important. They're probably just as important as your technical skills. And I've seen many very smart, engineers with a very, very good idea, a very defensible position, not be able to present that position well, and really, lose the edge, right? And then not get it approved. So I'd say the most important thing is becoming prepared. It's kind of why I kind of harped on that on a few different points. You really need to know the why, right? And if you go in without knowing the why, you can completely destroy your argument before it even starts. Because you go in and say, well, it doesn't even cost a lot. He's not even worried about that. He's worried about, my data getting out there or my data being trained, or they just don't know. So I'd say, the order of operations is really important. And of course, there's always politics, for sure. Navigating that, and again, that's done largely through soft skills.
Any more questions? Well, did I drop something again? Well, it dropped me. Cool.
Do you have any advice for anybody at the beginning of their technical career to get to a place with like working with the military and stuff like you were talking about, just a way to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start by saying don't join the Marine Corps. If you do it again, the Air Force is the way to go, for sure, no doubt. I've worked for all of them now. There's no doubt. Um, so if you want to work within the DoD or the federal government, a clearance is important. It's a good foot in the door. Certifications are big there. So, for instance, like 800 or 8,750 -2, right, says that you need to have certain certs to even be able to be an admin or operate a DoD system, right? So a lot of people just do Security Plus for that, but that gets you the foot in the door. So, if you don't have a clearance, you can say, hey, I have this cert, you have a position open. They're kind of hard to fill sometimes, not a lot of people are trying to get into that space, and they can then, sponsor your clearance. But the fastest way in is, be certified, meet the requirements to get the foot in the door. Then once you get the clearance, there's probably not much better job security, out there, because once you have the security clearance, you're competing with a tenth of the people, or maybe 100th of the people that you typically would for a position, and it really sets you up. So if you're not going to join the military, which is a good way to get your clearance, finding a progressive company, right, to sponsor you is the way to go for sure.
That's our time for this. So, can you?
Yeah, it's Chanco, CHANCO .dev. You guys are gonna make me say slash
Yep.
sloss again.
Got to say it. Slash slash.
That is,
The rural juror.
that's not easy. All right, thanks
Thanks,
guys.
Brandon.